allegations that Ukrainian drones tried to take out President Putin. There was lights are out in Moscow because of another strike that's going on down there. And then President Putin himself gives a New Year's message where he's talking about victory in 2026. A lot to unpack here. A lot of things going on. We are back with Larry Johnson, one of our favorite guests. Who's Larry the Shirt Johnson. He's that's our best one here. That everybody knows you more like that, even on other channels now I've seen. Yeah. But former CIA analyst, host of Sonar21.com, son of the New American Revolution on Substack.com. Larry, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, I had to go the lumberjack route today because of some cool temperatures in Florida.
I was going to say that. Where's your axe? Because I mean, I'm kind of expecting that on your shoulder there, but yeah, it's a cold one down in Florida today. What's like into the mid 40s or something, right?
Yeah. It's crept up into the 50s now, but it's still, for us, this is like an Arctic freeze.
I know. I was going to say it's probably a state of emergency that's going on. But well, look, speaking of a state of emergency and cold, you can even see the snow in this picture we got here. This is what, okay, so for everybody's understanding, I'm sure people have seen the headlines now. There's a claim that Russia said that the Ukraine side launched 91 drones toward the presidential retreat in Novgorod, where President Putin allegedly was when he was talking to Trump while Zelensky was in Mar-a-Lago. Of course, the Ukraine side said that's complete nonsense. There's no chance that happened. There was a Russian general overnight that had a detailed briefing where he showed lines of routes where these things went, where they were shot down. And then they're showing, as you see on the screen here, some of the wreckage. What they claim was Ukraine drones that were shot down in Russia. First of all, Larry, just kind of what is your CIA hat assessment? Is this a fake by the Russians that they're just using it for justification, or is it insanity by the Ukraine side?
It's insanity. If this was a fake by the Russians, first of all, the Trump administration could easily debunk the claim. They could show that there was no radar signature at all on any of the alleged drones. Well, they haven't done that. The Brits as well have the intelligence capability to prove that there was no such wave of drones launched. They haven't trotted that out at all. And then the fact that Russia has now gone to this length to start publishing this kind of video, yeah, it happened. And what's so important about it is it was happening. It started happening while Zelensky is sitting there with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago talking alleged peace negotiations. So it raises the fundamental question. Was Zelensky knowledgeable and aware that this was going to go on, or was this being done without his knowledge? I'm inclined to believe it was being done without his knowledge, because to do something like this while talking to Trump would really be damaging to him and his credibility.
Well, let's just ask Larry, because I mean, it's hard to whether he was with his knowledge, without his knowledge. Who can say right now, anyway? But let's look at whoever was it were. What in the world would they think to gain by this? Because it seems to me, now you tell me if you think I'm wrong. You know the Russian side much better than I do. It seems to me that if this drone attack had succeeded and, God forbid, actually killed President Putin, I mean, you would have a potential for a nuclear war right after that. It's hard for me to imagine that Russia wouldn't have had a massive response. The last thing that's even theoretically possible is that Russia would go, oh, snap. Okay, sure, Zelensky, whatever you want, we're ready to do. So then why would they do this?
Yeah, the death wish on the part of the West is just puzzling. Putin is a moderate. Putin is the one who's been calling for restraint. Putin is getting criticism in Russia for being too gentle in dealing with Ukraine. There is at least a majority sentiment that want to just wipe them out. And some of the comments that have been made by Dmitry Medvedev, the former president, reflects more the attitude of most Russians. So I don't get the West's desire that they think if they get rid of Putin, all their problems go away. No, their problems are going to get worse, much worse, very quickly. So that's why this is my own view on this attack is that it was more intended to hurt Zelensky and undermine him in order for the people that have been pulling his strings to get rid of him and bring in Zelensky. I believe that the real power behind Zelensky is this, the neo-Nazi Banderite crowd. They're the ones holding the actual strings, moving the puppet. And I think Zelensky's he's become now a liability more than an advantage or a resource. He was effective in getting money pumped into Ukraine over the last 4 years. That effectiveness now is, gone. I think the intent is to bring in Zelensky, who is ideologically more aligned with the Banderites and the neo-Nazi crowd.
And certainly, by virtue of his position in London, is much closer, I think, to the MI6 crowd and the other intelligence services throughout. So he seems to be very pliable and willing to do stuff. At least that's what it looks like from the outside.
Correct. So the timing of this attack, and again, what Trump and Zelensky were negotiating over, talking about, was Ukraine's 20-point peace plan. Well, Russia's already rejected that out of hand. There's no, it's not even worth talking about it. This is not like a negotiation to buy a car where everybody's agreed that, okay, yeah, we want to sell this car, we want to buy this car, just what are we going to pay for it? It's not that kind of negotiation. This is more like the negotiation of between one side wants a spaceship and the other side wants a horse-drawn carriage. And so you got to figure out what is the preferred mode of transportation. Well, that's not going to be resolved with negotiation. That's going to be resolved on the ground militarily.
And let's take a look at that, because that's if this attack here against Novgorod was unsuccessful and all the drones were shot down overnight. That was, I guess, 2 nights ago. Overnight, there was another attack of I want to say 109, I believe was the number I saw, of drones against Moscow. Most of those were shot down, but not all of them. And apparently some of them got through, and there was a significant blackout in Moscow, which doesn't happen very often. So they actually got through there. So the question is, what will Russia do as a result of this? Because it's hard for me to imagine that they're going to allow a known potential strike, according to what they're claiming, against their president, and then a successful strike to knock out the power in the capital city. What do you expect to come as a result of this?
No, they're going. It'll be a massive attack. I think they will use the Oreshnik.
Oh wow! Do you really?
Yeah. No, I don't see how they could not at this point. And
that's a big deal.
Yeah, the gloves will come off. Knocking out the lights in Moscow that's a significant strike. Now, and it's going to put more pressure on Putin to stop limiting the strike on government targets in Kiev, as well as with the Oreshnik. They can start taking out every single military installation. They've hit them with bombs, they've hit them with other missiles, but nothing with full devastation. So.
Now, Larry, a lot of the claims in the West and over the last 4 to 6 months especially has been that, yeah, you go, Ukraine, because you're using these long-range drones that you've created, your own long-range missiles of various types, and you've had success, and you've hit oil infrastructure, you've hit power stations, you've hit especially the oil reprocessing facilities, and really hurt Russia in at least curtailing some amount of their reprocessing capacity, which has had some limitations on their oil exports, especially. Hasn't had any impact on the front line yet, but it definitely is painful. Now that it seems like it's been stepped up, and they've had many attempts into Moscow, most of them have been shot down with no effort or no effect. But now then they're starting to. The claim being from the West that this is a good deal, because this shows the Russia. I've literally seen this in just the last week or so. This shows Russia this is what war is all about. So you think that you're going to escape the reaction of war. We're going to bring it to your front door. And now then hopefully they'll come close to understanding this is the pressure we've been looking to put on Putin to get him to come closer to these 20-point plans. Is that going to work?
No, it won't work at all. Look, the effect on the oil industry and oil exports has been grossly exaggerated in the West. 20 years ago, Russia, you'd say 25% of its GDP was tied to oil exports. That's been steadily dropping over the last 20 years. It's now down to like 12%. And the attacks on refineries Russia's not exporting refined gasoline, refined oil product, raw crude. And that's going to China and India where it is processed. So that really hasn't been affected. The fact that there has been this power outage, you can go online right now, turn to rt.com, power's on. Okay. They're not in the dark. They're not having to shut down that radio station or that TV broadcast station, which is it's in the northeast part of, or excuse me, the northwest part of Moscow. But having carried out this kind of attack, that it's a reminder that Ukraine cannot do that without Western support. So the issue now is going to be, to what extent is Russia going to start retaliating against the Brits in particular? The Brits are the big problem. They're the big instigator in this. The French and Germans, not so much. I mean, they've got harsh rhetoric, but it's British MI6 that's been engaged with helping plan attacks and providing intelligence support. But, there's also an element, you can't rule out that the CIA is doing so, and doing so in contradiction to Trump's policies. There is, I'll call them, I don't want to call them rogue elements necessarily, but they're coloring outside the lines. And I saw, this was brought home to me recently by one of my former classmates, a woman named Susan Miller. When I joined the CIA, I was 30 years old. She was 22. And she initially started off as an analyst, but she was chief of station in Tel Aviv, and so she started making the media rounds, and it turns out she was the one that wrote the intelligence assessment, or led the team that wrote the intelligence assessment about Russian meddling in the 2020 election, or the 2016 election, excuse me, the assessment that came out in January of 2017. The fact that she's on television talking about this is, the media, when you retire, there's not a notice sent out to the media saying, "Hey, here I am, come hire me and let me talk." That's not how it works. I started doing TV because the press guy in my old office at the counterterrorism office, his brother was a booker for CNN, but Susan doesn't have that kind of relationship. And so the fact that she's getting out there sort of throwing shade on Tulsi Gabbard, I mean, she basically said Gabbard was a liar. So
wait, I'm sorry. What did she say that Gabbard lied about?
The intelligence that there was that the intelligence assessment was bogus from 2017, and she was saying no, that's Gabbard's lying about that. That this wasn't done with pressure from the president and from Clapper and from Brennan. So when I see that tells me that there are still elements in the CIA that are heavily invested in this Ukraine project, and they're not going to let it go. I've also learned yesterday in a conversation with someone who's close to J.D. Vance that the CIA assessments they are relying entirely upon what's called liaison reporting. Liaison reporting means if the Germans claim that they have a human source, or the Brits, or the French, and we take their intelligence reports and push them out, and that's what we take as our intelligence. We're relying entirely, not a little bit, entirely on foreign produced intelligence that's not being run by us. And they are literally telling the president and the vice president that, oh, Ukraine's winning, Russia's losing, Russia's on the edge, Russia's weak, the military. I mean, all of this nonsense. And so as a result of that, you've had Trump and Vance and others take positions that are just not in touch with reality. So this has the potential really to escalate now to a point as we enter the new year of that there could actually be strikes on targets inside the UK, inside Germany. For right now, Russia is going to limit itself to inside Kiev, but they're going to take stronger steps to stop the resupply that's coming from places like Romania and Poland.
You know, I want to pull on that thread a little bit more that you just opened up here, because I think it's really, really important. We had earlier this week a soundbite from a British expert on Times of London, I think that it was, and he said, and I believe that he was saying it genuinely, like he actually believed what he said, not that he was trying to be disinformation, though that happens a lot. I think in this case, my assessment anyway, is that he really believed what he was saying, which is that he said, I think that Russia, Putin in particular, is confused, is that he thinks he's winning, but in fact, he is suffering 1 million casualties so far, is suffering. And I think it was Zelensky also in his interview with Fox News said that Russia is suffering 31,000 deaths each and every month. And they continue to get weaker and weaker and weaker. And he said, and it turns out, and this guy said it, I'm not making this up at all, not paraphrasing. He says Ukraine military is, quote, doing pretty well, as he says. So he thinks that Putin is confused on the things that he's saying, et cetera. And so that's what we should base our policies off of, this belief that's had widespread. Now, I've heard it from other sources that also have classified access here in the United States, and they validate exactly what you just said. That's being told to our highest leaders who believe the reports that are coming up from whatever those sources are. But here's the key thing. Even if you're hearing that in your ear, you have to look on the ground and go, hang on, something ain't lining up here. And let's just look at a few of them, Larry. So a couple of days ago, Gerasimov said that the Russians had advanced the furthest in year 2025 by 6,600 square kilometers they had taken. And the month of December by itself was over 700 square kilometers, increasing the scale and the pace of the acquisitions, not to mention the casualties that they're inflicting on the other side. Today, he said, by the way, it ain't just in the east, it's also in the north.
The northern group of forces has completed the liberation of the Kursk region, and in accordance with the instructions of the Supreme Commander-in-Chief, is establishing a security zone in the border areas of the Sumy and Kharkiv regions of Ukraine. In total, approximately 950 kilometers of territory have been taken under control, and 32 settlements have been liberated, including 14 in the Kharkiv region and 18 in the Sumy region. The largest of these is the city of Vovchansk. This month, the pace of expansion of the security zone has increased. 7 settlements have been liberated. The President of the Russian Federation has set the task of continuing to expand the security zone next year to ensure peaceful life for residents of the Belgorod and Kursk regions.
Okay, so the key part to that, to me, was not just a recitation of what they had done in 2025 or even in December, but going forward. He said the president gave the order to increase, and that's in the north, and we know that there's no slowdown in the east. What do you make of that?
Yeah, well, right now they're only 20 miles or 20 kilometers from Sumy. And from Sumy, then it's a direct shot into Kiev or to Kyiv. So the pressure that's being brought all along the front is something that Ukraine is not capable of responding to. They don't have It's just really, it's a simple math problem. Right now, according to the former prime minister of Ukraine, who I spoke to about 5 weeks ago, he insisted that right now the population of Ukraine is down to around 19 million. Russia's got a population of 150 million. Okay, and let's assume that that they are losing 31,000 a month. Well, so is Ukraine. In fact, the Ukrainian casualties are closer to 40,000 a month. And so who can sustain losses longer? Russia can. Ukraine can't. I mean, it's that simple. We have a solid benchmark, metric that we can follow. Since the 1st of January of 2025, there has been the Russia returning the cadavers of dead Ukrainian soldiers and Ukraine turning over the cadavers of dead Russians. For every single dead Russian, there are 35 dead Ukrainians. And that has been steady throughout the year. Now, some can say, well, that's just because Russia's moving forward so fast that Ukraine can't recover the bodies. Exactly. Okay? Exactly. Let's just assume that they're causing the same level of casualties, but Russia's moving forward. Ukraine is not. They're moving backwards. That is just a fact. The reason it is accelerated this year is because Russia has, over time, they're not on a wartime footing. They have not mobilized for war. And they've been a special military operation, which means they've mobilized 320,000 reservists back in September of 2022. And in the interim, they've relied upon conscripts and contract soldiers, volunteers. They have not gone out to mobilize. Stanislav Krapivnik tells me it's more like 10 million reservists that they could mobilize. Russia hasn't gone to that extent. It hasn't needed to. But as it built up the size of its ground force, which right now both the Russians claim by the Ministry of Defense is backed up by General Syrskyi of Ukraine, that Russia's got over 700,000, probably closer to 750,000 ground troops now in Ukraine.
Larry, I want to interrupt for a second.
Yeah.
Gary, can you pull up from our full screen from the previous show there, the one titled "Who Will Pay For"? Because this is from the Wall Street Journal. This was, I think this was today. It was either today or yesterday, where they inadvertently validated what you just said here. It says, look on that lower line there. It says that GDP on defense, this is for the Russian side, is picking up the tab. Russia's defense ministry is responsible for 7.3% of the country's GDP. Right. 7.3%. That is not even close to an all-out full mobilization for wartime. That would be probably in the neighborhood of 20-25%. If you go full in.
Excuse me, it's higher than that. I ran the numbers actually the other day, just out of curiosity. During World War II, the percentage of U.S. GDP we were fully mobilized for war, 45%. 45% of GDP. So yeah, that's where a full mobilization, it goes up.
That's what a full mobilization looks like. So people who say Russia is a full on mobilization, no, they're not. You see that number right there. Wall Street Journal, not from the Moscow Times or Komsomolets, some of these other Russian outlets that someone might claim is misinformation. That's what we're reporting. 7.4%, i.e., there's a long way they could go should they want to. And yet at that level, they are still succeeding. Now, what that tells me is that Russia has calculated that that's what they need to be able to win this war and still take care of their population so they don't get over-reliant on this. That seems to me to support something that President Putin said just a couple of hours ago, actually, in his New Year's speech to this nation, which I think, to my eyes, and you tell me what you think here, this seems different in tone than statements he's made even recently, in that Putin believes he will win in Ukraine in this New Year's address. He's telling his soldiers, we believe in you, we believe in victory, and we think that this is coming up. So implying that 2026 could be the time. Now, this was even more important than it may otherwise be the case, because it's not just New Year's Eve, but it's also on the day, the 26th anniversary of his ascension into office. And as, of course, we're heading into 2026. So given that he made this statement right before the Mar-a-Lago meeting with Trump and Zelensky,
Right.
that we've about lost our patience, and our interest is about zero, is the actual quote that he said, and even worrying about whether Ukraine is going to withdraw from any territory or not. If they don't want a peaceful settlement, we will take it by force. To my ears, that language that he used there and the language that he used just a couple of hours ago seems different in nature to what I've heard from most of this war, and implies either a really big self-confidence or he knows something we don't know.
Yeah, no, I think I think it's more the latter. He knows something we don't know, or he knows what their capabilities are that we refuse to accept or recognize or acknowledge. Um, the again, he is under pressure from a growing number of Russians to act with greater force. Uh, this whole kabuki theater surrounding the attempts of like a peace negotiation, 28-point peace plan, or 20-point or 19-point. There's not going to be an agreement. That is a dead end, because Russia's positions have been very clear. We've talked about it repeatedly. They've laid out what they want, and those are not points that they're willing to make concessions on. For example, they say, look, Crimea, Zaporizhia, Kherson, Donetsk, Luhansk, those are now permanently part of the Russian Federation. They're not going to give up a portion of it. They're not going to say, okay, we'll stop in place and let Ukraine continue to have some troops in Kherson and Zaporizhia. No, they're going to get out. The Trump administration crazy belief that they can somehow cut a deal with Russia to jointly operate the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant ain't going to happen. Russia is not going to allow the West to maintain any kind of presence whatsoever in Ukraine, much less Russia.
And let's see, Gary, if you can put that same headline back up there, that full screen we just had, because there's one other interesting part related to what you just said there. That first line there, Zelensky has said Ukraine needs to maintain 800,000 active security personnel, rejecting Russian demands that its military be capped at 600,000. Now, that's a reference to the 28-point peace plan that Witkoff came up with first, which I thought was a ridiculous number. That the only number I've ever seen that actually came out of Russia was, I want to say it was January 2024 or maybe 2023, where the one of the members of the Russian Duma said they figured about 85,000 would be what Putin meant when he said that there would be demilitarization, that number is what would be capped there. So unless I'm wrong, and you tell me because you track this closer than me, has Russia ever said that they would be okay with capping 600,000?
No, absolutely not. In fact, the 85,000 was the number that Russia and Ukraine tentatively agreed to during the Istanbul talks back in March of 2022. And then that agreement was scuttled with the intervention of Boris Johnson and Joe Biden and Lloyd Austin, the Secretary of Defense. So that's where Russia, that's part of what Russia means by demilitarization. Remember, at the start of this special military operation, Ukraine had a total ground force of around 275, 300,000, somewhere in that range, with a reserve force of 900,000. Well, how in the world is Russia going to claim that it's been fighting to demilitarize Ukraine, but it's going to agree to allow Ukraine to have a standing army that's roughly 3 times the size of what it had at the start of 2022? It's, it's delusional. Not going to happen.
And in terms of something else that's delusional and not going to happen, one of the other things, aside from we're not going to worry about the demilitarization that the Russians said, but we're actually going to worry about the territorial issue, which of course has always been the administrative borders of the four regions. And everybody's been talking about Donbass the most, but of course that also includes Zaporizhia and Kherson, which may be even bigger important. Right. But back to the one that's most important, here's what Zelensky said he's willing to do on Donbass.
What we have now, we have the question with the territories, and we can't, it's not about referendum or parliament or the president. We can't just withdraw. It's out of our law. We can't just withdraw from our territories. It's not only the law. People live there. 300,000 people live there. We can't lose just people. We can't go out because 100,000 have been wounded. Dozens of them have been killed there. And so I said that it's not only about the law and also our army there. That's why we proposed, I think, the compromise. If we do free economic zone, that we have to move some kilometers back, it means that Russia has to make mirror steps some kilometers back.
So I'm really sorry, Vladimir Putin, but turns out that Zelensky says that you're going to have to withdraw from territory. Not even that they're going to leave these Donbass, but you're going to have to withdraw. I think it's 20 kilometers across the entire front line. But that's just the way it has to be because that's the Ukraine constitution. So dang it. What do you think?
Yeah. It's going to be settled on the battlefield. It's not open for negotiation. He can take whatever position he wants. He can talk about buying real estate on Mars. That's as realistic as what he's discussing there. Russia is going to take it by force. And, whether the war ends in 2026 or goes beyond 2026, I think Russia will end up taking additional territory. They're going to, not just the regions right now that are part of the Russian Federation, but I'm talking Dnipropetrovsk, I'm talking Kiev itself, Odessa, Nikolaev, Sumy, Poltava, and Kharkiv. I think the potential is that all of that territory, that's basically it sits east of the Dnieper River, will become permanently part of the Russian Federation when this is done. The West is banking on some economic collapse, some political collapse. This is not going to happen.
Well, as it turns out, former Secretary of State and CIA Director Mike Pompeo is going to do Zelensky a solid, and apparently he's on the team Zelensky, but he has a solution. And to all those things you just said about what they can take and what Zelensky said about what they can't give up, he's like, oh, here's the answer. Trump just needs to use a bigger paddle.
The adversary here, Vladimir Putin, has, to best I can tell, conceded literally nothing to date. And while they say there's 90% agreement, I doubt that Vladimir Putin thinks that the relevant 10% that remains is anything he's willing to give up on. This is about land. He also doesn't want European forces on his border. That's part of the security guarantee. I'll bet that's a poison pill for him. I haven't seen them say anything different over the course of the last 6 to 8 months. I think in the end, Vladimir Putin's going to need to be hit with a lot bigger stick before he's prepared to actually come to the negotiating table in a serious way and do the simple thing of laying down his weapons and stop this aggression, the killing of Ukrainian children, Christians in Ukraine, all of the things we've seen for what is now, just goodness, almost the last 4 years.
Listen, on the New Year's Eve, I feel like we did a disservice. We probably should have brought that alarm up that we used for Zelensky about crazy Assad coming to just to give people a warning. That's the craziest thing that I have seen anybody say, especially somebody who's a former Secretary of State, that he mocks the idea that Putin hasn't given up anything yet. And the only thing that we need to do, the answer to all this, is Trump just needs to bring out a bigger stick and whack Putin about the head and shoulders. And then Putin will do something that is against his self-interest and that we like. What do you say?
It's time to break out the Christopher Walken sketch from Saturday Night Live. More cowbell.
Man.
I mean, Pompeo, he was correct. That Putin hasn't made any concessions, and Putin's position is firm. And you know, yeah, good, Mike. What Pompeo didn't admit is that he has been employed. He's now getting a $600,000 a year payment from a particular Ukrainian company that's involved with drone production, and he got a $13 million package of stock options. So Mike Pompeo is prospering off of this. And
Wow.
the nonsense that, oh, Russians are attacking Christians. Okay, he graduated from West Point. He was at the top of his class. So it's not like his brain has been fried by drugs. But what he's saying is so abjectly stupid and wrong that to sit down and say, okay, lay out for me, explain to me exactly what big paddle we're going to use against Russia that's not going to lead to Russia retaliating and attacking locations inside the United States. You know, the problem we have in America is we've been blessed by geographic isolation over the years. The last time we really had to worry about a foreign invasion was that actually took place was 1812.
War of 1812.
Because and we started that war trying to conquer Canada, and it blew up in our face. That's one of the reasons we don't talk about it much.
We don't talk about that very much. Yeah.
Well, let's pretend that didn't happen. But we've had the luxury of fighting World War I, World War II, Vietnam, name the conflict, and it doesn't come here to bite us in the ass. You know, we pay no price, but by God, we can go out and cause others to bleed. And one of these days, I'm afraid it's going to come back to haunt us, and we will suffer loss of life and devastation in this country.
Yeah.
And when that happens, that may wake us up out of this, imperialist fantasy we continue to pursue, where we go out and try to, we bomb Venezuela, we bomb Syria, we bomb Afghanistan, we bomb Iraq. We're going to help the Ukrainians bomb Moscow. And we think we can get away scot-free. It's insanity.
Yeah. And, I'm actually going to talk about a number of those issues. I'd like to kind of do a round robin lightning round with you before we let you go here on New Year's Eve, heading into 26. But before that, and really the first question is, given all that we just talked about where this war is in Russia, Ukraine, what the realities on the battlefield are, where do you see this going in the first quarter of 2026?
I think Russia's going to make far quicker advances towards the Dnieper River than most experts are now anticipating. Again, what we're faced with here, the thing that I don't think people properly factor in is let's just assume that Ukraine is able to recruit 30,000 new soldiers a month, or new recruits, because once you sign them up, enlist them, you got to train them. If you don't train them, just putting guys in uniforms and sending them to the front, that doesn't change the battle at all. If anything, it makes it even more dysfunctional. And this is the problem Ukraine faces. They don't have a secure location anywhere in Ukraine where they can take new recruits, train them up for 2 or 3 months, and then move them into combat units. People, the vast majority of Americans have never served in the military. And so they have no idea of the kind of training that is required to bring units up to a level where they can operate on a modern battlefield.
Yeah, definitely not.
And so that's I listen to a lot of these analysts, and they'd pretend that doesn't matter. It absolutely matters. And so how does Ukraine fix that? They don't have a fix for it. Their only fix is maybe to send soldiers out of the country, and then they get trained to Romanian standards or Polish standards or French standards. You don't get trained to ace. There's a reason military guys wear this thing called a uniform. The uniform is, you do want uniformity. You want conformity. You want to know that everybody, when they're given an order, are going to move in the same direction, not go, well, actually, my opinion on that is we're going to, you know, like a jazz musician. I'm going to freelance it here, do what I want. So with that as for me the critical factor, I don't there nobody's come up and said this is how Ukraine is going to fix that. They have a manpower
Yeah.
deficit. They are losing in casualties 40,000 a month, and in addition to that, and it's not from Russian sources, it's from the Atlantic Council and from the Institute for the Study of War, two solidly pro-Ukrainian outfits that have said Ukraine is having desertions between 20 and 40,000 a month. Unsustainable.
Unsustainable. Yeah, the whole thing. And then you factor on the actual casualties, killed and wounded. It just can't go on forever. The math is not going to work, as you pointed out earlier.
So I think what we're going to see is the collapse of the front in Ukraine. You push and push and push, and just like a balloon getting pumped to a point to where it explodes. That's going to happen, and I think it will definitely happen this year, because I think, like you were commenting earlier about the change in tone from Vladimir Putin. They're not screwing around, and he's made more visits to the front line troops in the last 3 months than he has in the last 3 years.
Yeah, and a couple, I think, in just the month of December by itself.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something to keep an eye on there. And as you said earlier, we'll definitely keep an eye, even in the near term, on what kind of retaliation Russia has. They said something's coming. They have said that about this strike in Novgorod, and about now the power being knocked out in Moscow. We'll see if that includes Oreshniks or not. Moving on to some other parts of the world here. We're going to start first in the Middle East. So Netanyahu just went to Mar-a-Lago, and by many accounts and by many assessments, is that he's trying to get concurrence from Trump to do one of two things, and possibly both. One is he wants either permission or just acquiescence, so that he can go back into the Gaza Strip and continue on with that war and pretend like the peace process, collapsed or something like that. He can go in. Probably the bigger issue is he wants to, quote, finish the job on Iran. Now, Jack Keane went on Fox News a little bit, I guess, in response to his visit here, and had this gem of an important thing to say.
You cannot have these adversaries build capability so that they really have the ability to do damage to Israel. And that's Hamas right there on the border, Hezbollah on the border, and Iran with long-range ballistic missiles and the potential for nuclear weapons. That is never going to happen again. Yeah. And that is the reality we're facing right here. We would like to see them voluntarily disarm, but they said they're not going to do it. And if the International Stabilization Force cannot do it because they lack the will, then obviously Israel will do that, and will have the United States' full support in doing that.
Then obviously, he says at the end, Israel will do that, and they'll have the full support. Larry, last time I remember, I don't remember a clause or a section of the U.S. Constitution that says that we will defend and protect the interest of the government of Israel, whether it's in our interest or not. Did I miss that part?
Yeah, no, you didn't. Look, can everybody get a grip on reality? The Israeli military is not very good. In fact, it's pretty weak. And we have clear evidence of that. Starting on October 7th, let's say October 8th, October 9th of 2023. That's more than 2 years ago. That's 26 months ago now. The Israeli army mobilized 300,000 troops to attack an area of about 350 square kilometers that is surrounded completely by Israel. They've got the Palestinians backed up against the sea. They've got control of the entire border area. And Israel has been unable to destroy what is an insurgent group. They're not carrying artillery and tanks. They're not supported with overhead imagery and intelligence.
Drones.
Yeah, they don't have drones. They don't have helicopters. They don't have combat aircraft. And Israel has been unable to defeat them. And yet it's out there saying, oh, yeah, we're going to go kick some ass. I mean, it is such a load of crap. They are a bunch of malicious bullies is what they are. They're good at killing women and children. They're good at killing unarmed men, but they have been unable to defeat some guys that got rifles and sidearms. And that is a fact. They keep talking about, oh, we're gonna go really put a hurt on Iran. Go ahead, try it, because despite all the nonsense about obliterating Iranian capabilities, Iran's ballistic missile capability is intact and has grown over the last 6 months. It was not destroyed by any stretch. And in addition, since the end of the conflict, that 12-day war on June 25th, Russia and China have been providing significant military support to Iran. Iran has rebuilt capabilities. Iran has agreed to accept help that previously it rejected. So this is.
Do you know what kind of help they've got from both Russia and China?
Pardon?
Do you know what kind of help they've gotten from Russia and China?
Air defense systems for sure, but there have been planes flying in and out. There have been at least one meeting with the head of the Iranian military, their defense minister in Moscow. So the support has been incoming, and I suspect, frankly, with some of the air defense systems, they will bring in Russian personnel to operate them. So Iran is in a better position now militarily than it was prior to the attacks on June 13th.
And do you think that might have been the reason why the Iranian president, Pezeshkian, I may be saying his name wrong, pretty confidently said, hey, we're basically in a conflict already with most of the Western world as it is, and we're much stronger. He said this himself. He echoed what you literally just said, that they are stronger enough than they were when this so-called 12-day war ended back in June.
Yeah.
So it sounds like he's confident. He's more confident, too, that they can withstand that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. In fact, this is part of again, the Western information operation to shape public perceptions to support new attacks on Iran. New York Post ran the headline that Iran declares war on the West. That was a headline 3 days ago. And it was based upon what Pezeshkian, he's being interviewed, and he said to the interviewer, yeah, we're at war with Iran, with Israel, with the United States, and with Europe, because they keep attacking us. He was just simply acknowledging the reality of what's going on. And the New York Post, who's a tool of the government of Israel, put out this headline to say the exact opposite, as if Iran was the aggressor in this. But I can't, I still come back to all these delusional Zionist first people, Israel firsters. Just look at the reality of the last 26 months. Your boys, these so-called soldiers, can't defeat Hamas. Haven't done it. We're going to do it. Yeah, I'm not holding my breath.
So where do you see this going in the first quarter of 2026?
Israel's going to continue to, it's going to be the more cowbell strategy. I do think that they're going to come up with a pretext to try to launch strikes on Iran. And if that happens, Iran has got a missile capability that will devastate Israel this time. Israel lives in a delusional cocoon. It's in this bubble where it keeps telling itself it's the best, it's the greatest, and it's not by any stretch. And that's the key point. They are overstretched.
Now let me go down that before I shift on to the next subject area. It seems to me that when this war ended by negotiation at the 12-day mark, it was not because President Trump has some extraordinary peacemaking skills and he convinced both the Iranians and the Israelis that, all right, boys, just put down your missiles and let's just talk about this. And they said, okay, because of the strength of your character and the power of your mind, we're going to go ahead and do this. I think it was because Israel said, oh, snap, man, a lot of these missiles are getting through the Iron Dome, the David Sling, all these integrated air defenses, and we're taking hard hits that we can't stop. And yeah, we're hitting Iran hard, but we need this to stop so we can figure something out. Iran, on its part, was also taking some heavy hits from Israel, and they had some motivation for this to stop. They had a lot of motivation for it to stop, but only because both parties said, okay, we need this to stop. Did it stop then? But none of the conditions that led to the conflict were even addressed, much less solved. So it seems to me they just push the pause button. And then the question is Israel think they have their air defense issue enough solved that they can get back into another round without receiving this, what you say here is an increased ballistic missile capacity from Iran. How do you see that playing into all this?
Yeah, well, and let's put it into the broader context that all of this was seen as a way to weaken Iranian influence over, in Syria, for example, with the taking out Bashar al-Assad and the alleged destruction of Hezbollah. Well, Hezbollah is not destroyed. And the fact of the matter is that Hezbollah has been able to continue to rearm and strengthen itself because the smuggling route that goes east to west, from Iran all the way to the Mediterranean, God, that's been around for about 3,000 years, okay? And the families that have run it are still there. So, they haven't shut that down. And so what we're seeing now is Hezbollah is still intact, despite U.S. efforts to try to destroy it, and Israel's claimed to have destroyed it, which it has not. And similarly, Hamas is still intact, and Israel is faced with resource limitations. Israel does not have unlimited manpower, unlimited economic sources, and in fact is heavily dependent upon the United States. Well,
and let me point blank ask you, is there even a theoretical attainable military objective for Israel if it gets the full concurrence of the United States? And if so, what is it?
Yeah, no, there isn't one. All they can do is they can inflict damage. Let's assume the worst case. Let's assume they decide to launch a nuclear weapon or two against Iran to take out certain, military sites or nuclear sites. All of a sudden, then you're going to bring in Russia and China. Russia and China have established military relationships now with Iran. It didn't exist prior to June 12th. In fact, the Russians had expressed some frustration. They actually had offered Iran a peace treaty along the lines of what they had, or a military treaty along the lines of what they had with North Korea. And the Iranians rejected it then, not now. After June 25th, the level of cooperation between both sides has dramatically increased. And China has a lot more economically at stake.
Yeah.
You'll see right now the Western media is putting out all these reports about, there are all these protests, the government, the anti-Muslim protests in Iran, they're rising. They're going to want the Shah back. Not true. In fact,
why wouldn't they want to go back to the Shah? Those were good old days for Iran.
Well, there's another podcaster, Nima Al-Qurshid, who's actually Iranian, but he lives in Brazil. He just went back to Iran for his first visit in 12 years. And I talked to him yesterday. I said, what's going on? And he goes, there's a problem with inflation, and there's a lot of frustration among the Iranian people with the government of Pezeshkian. They're frustrated with his government because they think he's too soft, too accommodating to the West. And he said that roughly it's about 25% of the population is still aligned with the former prime minister or president Ahmadinejad. I always called him I'm a dinner jacket, but Ahmadinejad was he's very conservative, but none of them, the vast majority, are not calling to overthrow the Islamic Republic. That's not directed at Khamenei. It's directed at Pezeshkian. And Pezeshkian, in fact, came out and said, hey, you guys, just yesterday, he says, these protesters, they have a point. They have a legitimate complaint, and we need to make economic reforms. And the central banker resigned from his position. You mean Pezeshkian didn't go out and beat the hell out of the protesters and throw them in prison? Instead, he said that you guys have a fair point and we're going to work on economic reform. Yeah, that sounds like a terrible regime to me. And
Yeah.
also
Well,
so Western intelligence agencies are doing everything in their power to hype this as this, the rising tide. See, there's all this opposition, so all we got to do is kill some more and they'll
yeah.
support us. I mean, it's insane.
It is, yeah, and it's not going to work. Moving on to a different area here. I don't want to spend too much time there because we got two others to
Yeah.
cover, which are also important. And let's move now into our own hemisphere in Venezuela. So there has continued to be boat strikes. There was another one 48 hours ago with this, and I think the only way you can call it is extrajudicial killing. Because there's no international law, there's no American law that allows you to just wantonly kill somebody who's accused of running drugs, but we keep doing it. And we claim that it's to keep us safe from drugs, even though hardly any of the drugs that ever come out of Venezuela are coming to the United States. They're usually going to Europe or so. And we're not even doing anything, the ones that are actually coming here. So that's spacious on its own front. But now then, Trump had previously given authorization for the CIA to conduct operations within Venezuela. And now apparently he said they have, and they struck a port facility there. Meanwhile, 15% of the Navy is sitting there. And I don't have this soundbite handy, but Lindsey Graham, a couple of weeks back, just went on TV to emphatically say, we've got 15% of the United States Navy here. If after this is over, Maduro's still in power, it is a huge failure for us. Literally just putting the onus on Trump, just saying, I called you out. If you don't get rid of him, if this is not about regime change and you don't do it, then it's going to be bad on you. And he went into all this other stuff, exposing that this is not about drugs. This is not even about oil so much as it is about regime change. That's what he says. Now, we haven't done it to this date. And after this one strike, nothing else has happened. Where is this going in 2026?
Well, again, change the regime. Then what? What next? What's the follow-up? Who's going to be in charge? And do they actually have a foundation of support in Venezuela? Let's start with the drug network. Maduro and the Venezuelans are not the masterminds. They're not the heart, soul, and brain of any international narcotics effort. The fact that cocaine and marijuana have been transiting through Venezuela and being shipped out into the United States and to Europe, that's been underway for at least 15 years. All you have to do is go look at the annual report from State Department, the International Narcotics Strategy report that is put out by the Bureau of let's see, what is International Law and Narcotics, INL. So that's not new. So the ones who are the brains behind this network, if they're losing shipments going in one route, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to change routes. They'll start shipping it out of Colombia, and they'll put it out in Aruba and Curacao. They'll find alternative routes. They can also move it. Hey, they can move it across the borders into Brazil and go through Brazil. So it's not like this is the heart, the nerve center of international narcotics activity. It's not. So this is going to be a wasted military effort. The fact that they're openly bragging about a CIA military operation. Let me remind everybody, the CIA is not the military. And unfortunately, there's a lot of hype surrounding what's called the Special Activities Division. That is an appropriate acronym. Special Activities Division. Sad. Very, very sad. Because what you get in that outfit, you do get some retired people that come out of top tier 1 units, but they come out, they're not physically at the level that they were when they were operators. They are, as one of my friends said jokingly, they qualify for the handicap parking pass. All right. Then you get a number of people that wanted to be into those top tier 1 outfits when they're in the military, but they couldn't cut it. And so they get to go out and go do this paramilitary thing with CIA, and they're not held to the same discipline. They're not held to the same standards that conventional military or even special operations forces are. And so they build this legend about themselves as being, terrific, operators. Um, again, they're good people there, but they're not part of they don't fit into an overall military strategy. So again, we're blowing up a warehouse in Venezuela. Okay, there are other warehouses. Do we have enough capability to blow up every single warehouse? And again, then what? Because
Right. And actually, I want to this headline that Gary has up here. I think is maybe more important than may appear. I'd like your view on this. Maduro laughs off U.S. campaign. He's been doing this since he was first, since it came out that Trump said that he'd be better off if he left. He should go out publicly. He said that. Maduro comes out and he's dancing the next day out in public, out in the open, even so that he could, at risk of being hit with a drone, assassination attempt. And it's like he's just mocking Trump and saying, yeah, I'm not going to do it. Now he's laughing him off. Isn't there a risk? And maybe I hate to say this out loud, but maybe Lindsey Graham has a point that if Trump doesn't take any action here, he is going to be a laughing stock, and seeing that even this laughing Maduro can outlast him. Now, let me just caveat that before I even get your viewpoint. I think that it would be a catastrophic decision. I think he should definitely not do it. That Trump should not make good on that. But isn't there a risk that if he keeps doing all this stuff and Maduro's laughing at him off, that if he doesn't take action, that it makes us look even worse? Or is it even possible to look worse? I mean, maybe that's the point.
Yeah, no, I don't think we still got some depths to probe and looking worse. But
okay, that's
troublesome. What is it about our naive obsession that if we just removed a leader, it's going to change the situation? We tried that in Iraq with Saddam Hussein. We tried it with Manuel Noriega. How about Muammar Gaddafi? Hell, let's go back 65 years to Ngo Diem in Vietnam. So we've got this naive belief without understanding that Maduro is a leader of a system and an organization and a structure. And you know what? If he dies, someone else steps into his place. He's not this magical personality that everything revolves around him. And yet, we in the United States, we're so damn naive. I mean, we see it again. All we got to do is get rid of Putin. Get rid of Putin, man. That'll fix the situation. It doesn't.
So go down that path. Let's say that we succeeded. We have an assassination attempt and it succeeds and he gets taken out, or we get somebody inside to have a coup, et cetera. And I think Maria Machado is her name, the Nobel Peace Prize winner, et cetera, that we have already designated to go in. Let's say that we install her. Is that going to bring peace to Venezuela? And is it going to then open up the gates for us to come in and take all their oil wealth?
Yeah, no, it'll do just the opposite. So I don't know this for a fact, but based on my experience in the area, there are at least 3 to 10 different people that are profiting from the movement, transport of illegal narcotics, and they make a lot of money off of it.
You're talking about in Venezuela?
In Venezuela, right? And they also are involved with smuggling other things, weapons, etc. So Maduro goes, they don't go away. They'll continue their business. And they have people that work for them. It's just like with the cartels we see in Mexico. Look, we've been unable to, quote, destroy the cartels or rein them in. We naively believe, go back about 40 years, 35 years ago, one of my business partners, he retired, 5 years ago, but he was the chief of international operations at DEA. And they came up, it was in the late, sort of the mid 80s to late 80s, came up with what they called the kingpin strategy. And that was, hey, all we got to do is take out the top level people of the Cali cartel, Escobar, take him out, get rid of the Sinaloa cartel, take these top guys out, and the narcotics business will collapse. It absolutely didn't. What happened was it's like hitting a ball of mercury. It fragments, but you've got intact pieces of mercury all of a sudden. Instead of dealing with one, now you got 10. And then you break those 10, then all of a sudden you got 100. And that's what's going to happen in Venezuela. You break up Maduro, all of a sudden you'll have 5 or 6 different Maduros to deal with in
So
different areas.
one might reasonably argue that if we succeed in the regime change operation down here, we're buying more disruption for ourselves and more trouble.
Yeah, it's one thing if you have a regime change that's organic, that becomes because the people say, hey, we're sick and tired of this guy. We want to get rid of him. But that's not what you have. We have downplayed the support, the level of support that Maduro has and Chavez had before him. Because remember, the previous leader, we're going back now 35 years to the early 1990s. The previous leader of Venezuela was a paid CIA asset, Carlos Andrés Perez. And under Perez, they had, a sharpening of divide with a very few wealthy and a large number of impoverished Venezuelans, even though they had all this oil. Inflation was spiking. Chavez came out of, he had support. He had popular support. That's what we keep ignoring here in the United States. And Maduro as well has a level of popular support that we don't want to acknowledge. So we keep pretending that this woman that we've now created as the new leader of Venezuela, you don't see people walking around with her face on a poster. She is an artificial creation of the CIA, in my view.
Yeah, so it's nothing's good come from that. Okay, and let me make sure you have enough time. Do you have time to go on to the?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thanks. I know we kept you a little longer than normal, but this is so fascinating. I don't want to cut it too short. China, Taiwan. So there is currently a big an exercise, naval and air exercise that the Chinese are doing, which is kind of ramping up. This is the third major exercise, which basically rehearses a blockade of the island in several places. It's done within the ADIZ, the Air Defense Identification Zone for Taiwan. It's not technically in their airspace and waters, but really close to it. China is saying, and Xi Jinping in his New Year's speech reiterated that Taiwan is an inalienable part of China, that it will definitely be brought back in. They've been saying that forever, so there's nothing new particularly in that. This is the third of these. That's been going on a long time. But given that the leader, the new president of Taiwan, is a lot more outspoken on independence things, which has always been the red line for China, do you see any concerns heading into 2026 that China may ever actually make good on its threat?
No, I don't think they will, because I think they're confident that they can solve this politically. But what you will see is a hardening of their relations with the West. So already there are limitations on the shipments of rare earth minerals, with U.S. defense industry absolutely needs and can't live without. They're also imposing now a ban on shipping silver. They're one of the largest silver producers in the world. No more silver coming overseas, it's really critical in certain industrial processes in the West. They are taking the lead now with AI technology, primarily because they've got the electrical capacity to power that industry. The United States is putting a lot of money betting its future on AI, except it requires a level of power generation, electrical consumption that we can't produce and won't be able to produce for another 5 or 10 years. So I am always fascinated by, I listen to a number of experts on our so-called China experts, and they're always downplaying and dismissing China as sort of this, flash in the pan. They refuse to recognize that the transformation China has made over the course of the last 10 years is it's transformational. They have now established themselves not only as the leading industrial power in the world, but they're also taking the lead in. They used to have a reputation for stealing technology and spying and getting things from the West. Now they're creating it on their own. They're doing things that we're not doing. And remember when Trump tried to put pressure on China and said, "Oh, we're not going to let NVIDIA sell you any more computer chips." And then apparently in the last couple of months he said, "Okay, never mind, we'll let you buy them." And China said, Sorry, we're not interested. We're not buying anything. They used to buy from NVIDIA. They're not buying now. They're making their own. So that's what I said with respect to this. China does not have a history of being a military power, and they don't go overseas seeking to conquer other countries, and their military is not built to project force outside of the boundaries of China. And that's why I don't see them having sudden change of heart and say, yeah, let's get into this, because if they decide to go down that road, that is a road of destruction, as we're seeing with respect to the United States.
Yeah.
We've squandered trillions of dollars in idiotic wars that, you go back and look at the sacrifice that a number of, 58,000 Americans made in Vietnam. And for what? For what? Accomplished absolutely nothing other than killing 58,000 Americans and God knows more than 1 million Vietnamese.
Yeah. Last question I got for you, and that's kind of the 30,000 foot look. So we just talked about a lot of issues with in the Middle East, in Venezuela, and in the Pacific, Indo-Pacific, with China, Taiwan, etc. What do you think would be? And I'll just say this is a worst case scenario, but whether it's going to happen or not is certainly up for debate. But if we still find ourselves trying to support Ukraine at the level we have, and many people don't realize it, but we do still give stuff to Ukraine. Now we sell it allegedly, but we are definitely still sending stuff to Ukraine. We are still sending stuff to Israel. We just had this biggest package we've ever had, $11 billion to Taiwan. We just announced recently. So we're sending stuff there too. Now, in the event that we get sucked into a war, let's say we get sucked into a war with Iran, and then maybe we start a war and we suck ourselves into a war against Venezuela or so.
Right.
Then whether China does or doesn't do anything in the South China Seas areas or Taiwan, maybe just leave that one off the map. That would probably be a deal killer by itself. But if we get sucked into these other wars while we're still trying to give weapons and ammunition to all these other places around the world, what does that do to the United States? What is the risk to us to have this military first policy?
It drains resources from a financial system that's not very strong. We are the term over leveraged. We owe more money than we make. Our debt to GDP ratio is now about 127%. The national debt continues to grow. It's not reducing. So we're living with sort of some economic illusions that we think everything's healthy, everything's strong, but you get lots of warning signs that there's some problems in the system. And again, go back and look at just the whole AI issue in terms of industries. They got to build up these things called data centers that are basically filled with computers that run and do all this massive processing of information. And those computers require electricity to run them. And where are you going to get that electricity? And what they've discovered, what's happening in some areas, is when they build these data centers, the price of your electrical bill for the average consumer goes up because it's just simple economics. The demand for a limited, it's happened to you?
Yeah, definitely.
So the demand for a finite resource goes up, the price goes up. Basic economics. So the United States does not have the kind of military power we think we have. And that was put on display. One of the lessons of 2025 should be, we tried to stop we'll do a takeoff on Bob Dylan's song, "I Shot the Sheriff." We shot the Houthis, but the Houthis didn't, surrender. They didn't capitulate, as Donald Trump claimed. They beat us. They beat the U.S. Navy in the Red Sea. Now, if the Houthis can do that, why do we think that the Russians and the Chinese are less capable than the Houthis? It's insanity. So
when you put it in those kind of terms, it's pretty stark.
Yeah, so that's what we have going into 2026. We have a political class that is so self-deceived, deluded, as was illustrated by the comments of Mike Pompeo. Pompeo is representative of that political consensus that still dominates Washington. And when you have a consensus based on false premises, you've set yourself up for failure. So I think 2026 will be a year of failure for the United States in its foreign affairs.
Well, let's hope that you're wrong on that.
Yes.
I hope that we don't have that, but the pieces are certainly in place there. And we're going to have some pretty substantial changes at the elite level, as we've shown you. Mike Pompeo, we've talked about Lindsey Graham, Jack Keane, so many of these others that qualify as elite. Just have insane ideas that are leading us to destruction, and very little is moving us in a positive direction. But there's always that hope. That's certainly what we're going to be praying for, and we are just hopeful that we can see some of that. But in any case, we want to expose the truth of this, and really appreciate you this whole year that you've been coming on the show here. We're very grateful for it. Look forward to see you in 2026.
See you next year.
And we'll see you guys too. The next time you'll see us on the air is going to be 2026, folks. We'll see you tomorrow. We will be on the air tomorrow. In the meantime, make sure you let your friends know. Apple Podcast, Spotify, Podcast Addict. We're on podcast now. We want to make sure that you have the ability to share with us, with everybody that you know that needs to have this information, because they're not getting it from other sources, folks. You're not getting it on mainstream media anymore. So whether that's podcast, whether that's Substack, whether that's here on YouTube or Rumble or X, we're all those places, and we want to make sure that you have access to that truth and can share it with those you love. Thanks, folks. We really appreciate you. We'll see you next year on the Daniel Davis Deep Dive. You know, I don't try to talk you into buying gold or tell you how to run your stock portfolio, but there is a way you can help us. Subscribe, hit that like button, and share this with somebody you love.